Welcome to Between the Lines. I'm Al Travis. In this week, first-time Senator Howe from District 28. We're going to talk about everything going on at the Capitol. We're going to do that next on Between the Lines.
In an ideal world, your power company would always be there for you. They'd always invest in the most reliable technology out there, and they do it all just for us. Well, that's just what it's like being a member of our electric co-op. And when we hit the switch, we know exactly what's going to happen.
When we shine as one.
Great River Energy, providing electricity to 28 cooperatives throughout Minnesota.
Since 1947, Care Providers of Minnesota has been committed to quality health care services for Minnesota seniors. Our association gives Minnesota seniors access to quality care and services throughout the state. Care Providers of Minnesota is senior care in Minnesota. For more information, call 1-800-462-0024 or visit our website at careproviders.org.
Welcome back to Between the Lines. Al Travis with Senator Howe. Thank you very much for coming on the program. Really do appreciate it. You're from District 28, and for most of us that don't memorize the map, draw that out for me. Where are you from, and where does 28 go?
Well, 28 starts at Red Wing, and it goes down along the river, goes all the way down up to the population sign of Winona. So it takes in Good View, and of course there's also another town called Goodhue.
Yes.
And so it's Goodhue County, Wabasha County, and parts of Winona County. So I go over to St. Charles, actually Lewiston, and I go all the way over western to Watamingo and Kenyon, and then up to Pine Island, Zumbrota, Cannon Falls, and then I follow the Cannon River back to Red Wing.
All right, and that's for now because redistricting is going on. But
Who knows where redistricting is going to go?
We do a thing called 11 rapid fire questions for first-time people.
Fabulous.
So let's do this. I need to know what your favorite movie is.
My favorite movie? Probably Cool Hand Luke, because I worked at a prison.
50 eggs, 50 eggs. Nobody can eat no 50 eggs. I love that.
Is that okay, boss?
I love that. Okay, good. That's a great answer. Interesting fact most people don't know about you.
That I was chairman of the board for the Sears Dealer Store Organization. Actually, you know, I should probably correct that because most people don't know I was mayor of Red Wing, and that's an inside joke with my Senate friends. So.
Okay. Favorite pastime?
A favorite pastime is probably hunting.
Anything in particular? Birds?
Deer hunting.
Okay. First job?
First job, working on the farm, you know, working for another farmer.
Okay. Nights or mornings?
I love mornings.
Okay. Your best trait?
My best trait is probably just openness, and somebody asks me a question, I'll give you a straight answer.
You married?
Yes.
Your significant other's best trait?
Putting up with me.
All right. Mimes, funny or strange?
Funny.
We don't get a lot of that. Interesting. Okay. Your biggest pet peeve?
Biggest pet peeve is people not using their blinkers.
Okay. What job, other than the one you have now, what did you always wanted to be when you grew up? What job do you want to have?
Probably I wanted to go into law. I wanted to be an attorney. But
all right. If you were on America's Got Talent, what would your talent be?
Well, probably reciting something, you know, probably reciting the Declaration of Independence or something.
Oh, reciting. I thought you said reciting as in carpentry work. I'm like, yeah, putting up siding on a building would be fun to watch. All right, thank you very much. That's our 11 rapid fire questions. Tell me this. Give us your background, because you haven't been on. You were not a senator 2 years ago, so you're new, first term.
Well, I grew up in western Minnesota. I always tell people you just follow that western border of Minnesota where it makes that little hump, draw a line straight down, straight across, and put a dot there, and I grew up on a farm out there. You probably remember independent Senator Charlie Berg from Chicago, Minnesota, and that's where I'm from. Okay. And went to school in St. Cloud, went to school for criminal justice. Okay. Got my BA there. Just finishing my master's degree there. Worked at the prison, and then started working for retail security for Dayton's, Target, and then became a district manager for Sears. Okay. And I had a 5-state area for Sears. When they restructured, I ended up going back, finishing my degree, took a caseworker job at the Department of Corrections down in Red Wing, and that's what brought me to Red Wing 19 years ago. And then I ended up opening a Sears store there, and I had I had 6 independently owned Sears stores.
Okay. Now let me ask you this. So you're doing fine. Life's going well. What
Right.
makes you want to become a senator of the state of Minnesota?
Interesting story. I did want to become mayor of Red Wing, and I wanted to help the city out there. We needed someone who would do a good job public speaking and also presenting things for our city. And that's all I wanted to be, was the mayor.
Okay.
After coffee one day, the former senator, Lyle Merkin, stops me in the parking lot and he said, you know, I think you should run for Senate. And I kind of chuckled and I said, well, not interested. A couple weeks later, he came back and said, no, really, the boys and I are talking. We think you should run for Senate. And of course, we had Senator Murphy there who had been there 18 years. And anyhow, you know, I did talk to Senator Murphy about running, but Lyle Merkin's, Senator Merkin's kind of lined everything up, talked to Senjum, and then so I put my name in the hat, and I won.
So let me ask you, compared to what you thought it would be like and what it's like, how's it been? What's been the biggest difference, or has it been?
Well, I never ever, you know, I had come up and maybe testified, I think twice as mayor of Red Wing on some nuclear storage issues and some energy issues, but I had never really spent much time at the Capitol, so it's all new. And actually seeing how the end game got played out last year is going to make me a better legislator. I think all of us, you know, there was 23 freshman senators last year, 21 were Republican, 2 were Democrats. And I think we learned a lot, and you do learn a lot. There's a big process on you know, it's simple on how bills advance, but there's so much behind the scenes that it takes to get things done.
Well, let me ask you, and you can just between us, because I'm sure.
Sure, we're not going to share
I'm
any
sure
of this.
Senator Senjum won't be watching. Is everyone playing nice? And here's what I'm asking, because I hear rumor that like 14 positions from the DFL's support staff was eliminated budget-wise.
Yeah.
One of the first things,
Right.
I mean, if it wasn't the first thing done when session started. The PUC commission was, that nomination was taken off. They said no thank you, and the governor's steaming mad at that. I'm just asking, this is inside politics a little bit, with the way things ended last year, is this kind of a little getting back, just a little?
No, I don't think so, Al. I mean, there's a lot to it. You know, when you talk about the positions, you know, what we really should have done on that is we should have taken the budget for the minority, the budget for the majority, put them together, cut it by 5%, and we should have divided it by 67 senators. And then the majority has 37 senators. Here's your lot. The minority has 30 senators. Here's your lot.
And if we usually is done though.
No, it's not.
Oh,
it's not done. And if we would have done that way, the DFL would still have $325,000 too much money, and the Republicans would, the GOP, the majority caucus would have about $375,000 too less of money. So you know, the part of the problem is the DFL was in control for 38 years. I mean, this is the first time in the history since party designation in 1972 that the Republicans have an office in the Senate. And I actually am offering legislation up to bring all the senators over to the Capitol. I think when people come to the Capitol, they want to see their senator in the Capitol. But part of that is the pay structure, because people have been there so long and staff has been there so long. There's salaries that are much higher, and so you know, when you get into all these throwing these figures around, you're going to have the minority leaders say, "Geez, you know, they're just cut 14 positions from us," and we shouldn't get into cutting positions. We should say, "Here's your lot of money based on your number of senators. Use it how you deem necessary." And so it really kind of is a messaging issue, and we really, you know, of course, the DFL is going to say, well, you just...
Okay, so it wasn't playing mean. We're going to break here. It wasn't playing mean. It's just that's the way it is, and that's how the numbers came out. And
yeah, and the same thing with Commissioner Anderson. You know, we knew that nomination. It was like it was like foreshadowing to a bad novel. We knew that wasn't going to get approved. It probably should have been taken up last year, but because of all the things that were going on, so.
But
that was no
the
surprise.
governor who makes that recommendation must have known that. I mean, is he playing fair then when he,
well,
when
now,
he raises
come on.
the stink and it's like, wait, you knew this wasn't going anywhere.
Hey, how many times did the governor not vote for a nomination when he was a senator up in the U.S.? Was it 29, 49 times? I mean, he voted against several appointments, and so I think for anybody to point the finger, and I know they said, well, this is payback. It wasn't payback. Nowhere in any of our discussions we talk about retribution for Carol Monow or Sherry Yucky. It was all based on the legislative record and what happened at the PUC.
Fair enough. I just need to ask because it's in the paper. We're going to be back right after this on Between the Lines. Stick around.
Farmer's work is very hands-on, but he doesn't just have an impact on the land beneath him. He makes a big mark on the rest of the world, too. Using environmentally sound practices ensures a healthy farm and a healthy future for his family. And that ensures a healthy future for us all. No doubt about it, farming makes a huge imprint on our planet. Brought to you by Minnesota's corn farmers.
In an ideal world, your power company would always be there for you. They'd always invest in the most reliable technology out there, and they do it all just for us. Well, that's just what it's like being a member of our electric co-op. And when we hit the switch, we know exactly what's going to happen.
When we shine as one.
Great River Energy, providing electricity to 28 cooperatives throughout Minnesota.
I'd like to check out the camera, please.
Sure. You just need to fill that out.
Okay,
No.
just... I'd like to check out the camera.
Nope. 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 Not a chance. Nope. Nope.
Can I check out the camera?
Sure, if you just sign this, I'll go grab a camera. He's from Bethany.
Welcome back to Between the Lines. Al Travis with Senator John Howe from District 28. Again, thanks for coming on the program. Last year, and it ended going long and all that, the negativity, but you guys obviously did some things because we got the budget done.
Right.
But now we're coming in, and it looks like, what, $876 million surplus.
Right.
Which, boy, you got to say thank you very much because you don't have to go through,
Right, we don't have to go through that, but and we have a set way, a statute says how that gets paid back, and we're just about to have the cash reserves paid back, and now any additional surplus will go to pay back the K through 12 shift funding. And the K through 12 shift, that's been implemented. What we did was an extension and an additional 10%, but we are in a much better position, and I think some of the tough issues we bent the cost curve, the growth curve on government spending. That's what we did, and that's what has led us to having a surplus.
What do you say then? So there's this $876 million. It's spoken for, which
It
is
is,
good.
absolutely.
But what do you get when there's a surplus and yet your governor's sitting there saying he still thinks he's not going to lay off this? We need to tax the rich more.
Well, it's class warfare, and it's easy to say just tax rich, but you really need to look at where not only the job creators come from, but where that percentage falls. I mean, if you really look at the decimal points of where people are paying the taxes, you might say, geez, they're not paying their fair share, but if you actually look at the dollars and what proportion are there, I think if you look at the top 10%, they're probably paying 37% of all the taxes that are paid. So it's easy to say, let's just tax the richest 2%. And we have a very progressive tax system in Minnesota. I've been with Commissioner Franz on his three-legged stool tour, where he's showing the three legs and how it's fallen over. And really what we need to do is we need to have our tax structure right. We need to shift away, and that's why I worked with the governor and his commissioners last year. We need to shift away from such a heavy focus on income tax and property tax, and we need to move more to a consumption-based tax. And that's what we should do.
And I don't know how much pull you have on that. Is that something we Minnesotans can see coming? That, because I guess you don't see change or enough change when times are tough, but now, and I'm not saying times aren't tough, but at $876 million surplus we weren't looking for, this might be an opportunity for us to say, now is the time. I mean, is this the time for change?
I think last year when we had the shutdown, I thought that created an opportunity, in a crisis, we could have came out of with some change. Unfortunately, we didn't. This year's an election year. I really think we need to position our changes in our tax structure for probably 2013, realistically. But 20 years ago, 70% of everything we bought was goods, and we had 30% services. Now, 67% of everything we buy is services, and it's shifted. And yet, we don't tax services; we just tax goods. And so we've had such a heavy reliance on income tax, and we had it worked out where we could expand the sales tax to take in services. We could lower our overall sales tax by almost 2 percentage points, and we could go to a flat 7% state income tax. Doesn't matter what you make, a set flat 7%, and we would exempt the first $30,000 of everyone's income. So it would be a home run. It would be a great thing.
So you've written this down, and you're proposing that this year. Is that what I'm getting? I mean,
Well,
it sounds wonderful. I'm just wondering if we're going to.
I worked with the governor. I worked with Myron France. But again, you have to have a condition where you can implement that. And I think working with the commissioners and working with my caucus, you have to position it. We're going to take some steps towards it.
Okay. I want to ask. One headline that I got was the state was asking for consultants to help ferret out any fat in the budget, which is what, $34 billion.
Well, that's the general fund side. We actually we run our state on about $65 billion on a biennium. So I mean, it's a big budget. There's probably a lot of room there.
Well, talk about that. Well, and I don't disagree. I guess what first got me is great. If we can find the fat, let's cut it out.
That's
I think that's great. But then it hits me like, wait a minute. We have guys like you,
right,
and all the senators and representatives that should be going through those budgets, so we should kind of know. And then we have, of course, the people that actually run those different organizations, Human Services and MnDOT, and isn't it their job to try to do it with?
Yeah, it is their job, but the other thing is you need to implement resources that can help you, some experts in the field. People have done this in other states. We don't have to recreate the wheel here. If we're looking for savings, we might have a consultant that worked with Texas or worked with Virginia or worked with some other state and said, here's where they found money. Here's where you could probably do this more efficient. And no different than having an energy audit in your house. You know which light switches you should switch. You know what you should replace that light, but you have an expert come in and say, Al, you could save X amount of dollars if you did this, and here's the payback.
But is this, and tell me this is they get a percentage of what they find in savings, and it isn't, we pay Bob Johnson's consulting $20 million, and they come in and say, look what we found $5 million in savings.
Right. Well, you have to weigh that. I wouldn't be opposed to having a percentage deal on it, but sometimes you don't want to give away the farm either. If they find $1 billion in savings, do we want to pay them we have to look at all that. But
and this is Al's plan. You use this if you want. All those people that work for the state of Minnesota in each department, if you were to offer them a 10% finder's fee, let them.
I think that's a great idea.
Because then, hey, if a state employee gets rich because he saved us $1 billion,
fabulous. Let's do it
on TV. All right.
I'm going to call that the
Al Travis. I'd love to be on a bill somewhere.
Yeah, we'll call that.
Not everyone in the room thinks so. I've got to go to break, but when we come back, you're a nuclear guy.
Right.
Almost a nuclear physicist.
I wouldn't go that far.
And we're going to talk Viking Stadium because people want to know. We'll do it next.
Since 1947, Care Providers of Minnesota has been committed to supporting long-term care providers in their delivery of quality health care services to Minnesota seniors. Our association of over 600 proprietary, nonprofit, and government-owned long-term care providers gives Minnesota seniors access to quality care and services throughout the state. Our membership includes assisted living communities, short-term stay for rehab, long-term care in nursing facilities, hospice, and home care services. Care Providers of Minnesota is senior care in Minnesota. For more information, call 1-800-462-0024 or visit our website at careproviders.org.
Farmers really aren't much different from other small business owners. When we're not out in the field, we're online, keeping tabs on the weather, adapting to changes in the market, and protecting our investment by using good conservation practices. Running a successful small business means providing for your family, but when you're a farmer, it also means providing for everyone else. Now, and for generations to come. Brought to you by Minnesota's corn farmers.
Welcome back Between the Lines. Al Travis with Senator Howe. Thank you very much for coming on the program.
Thank you.
You live in a nuclear place.
Yeah.
Let's just be honest. You guys got that nice nuclear facility down there, and I've been through it, so I think I don't know what I'm talking about here. Nuclear storage. This is what got me. I go through that whole power plant. Get this.
Right.
Loved it. Fun, neat, interesting. As much as I know about nuclear energy, but then they're going to take us out to the waste dump.
Sure.
We're going to take this bus right out there. I'm like, oh, this is going to be sweet. And I don't know if I was thinking that three-eyed frogs were going to be jumping around.
It's not like the Simpsons.
It's not.
No.
You get out there, and it's a little six-pack. If I could, it's just a six-pack.
Well, they're not little. I think they're about 250 tons, but they're big. They're big.
But they're in this huge field. It looks like a little six-pack, and that's like 40 years of this stuff.
Right. I think one of the things we're going to learn is nuclear storage is a big issue. The General Accounting Offices say now plan for on-site storage for up to 500 years. Unfortunately, the current administration, the federal administration, and Harry Reid has decided that, you know, we spent $10 billion in Yucca Mountain, we're not going to use it. And that's unfortunate. And they're trying to get that license dismissed with prejudice, which means we can't go back and ever open it up if there's a change in administration. Now, if it's going to be stranded here, and one of the problems we have is we wanted that storage gone. But if we're going to store it here, here's what's important to remember, Al. In the storage pool, this stuff needs to be cooled for 7 to 12 years before it's cool enough to move it into a storage containment facility, a dry cast. We have 39 worth of spent fuel rods in that storage pool. So we need to move that as fast as possible into dry cast storage, because if you see what happened at Fukushima, the real danger zone was the stuff that was in the storage pool. And that's not covered by any concrete, it's not protected. And so I would hope that the nuclear energy would move to go take the storage pools back to minimum configuration and move that in. Now, the other concern is we need to make sure we have enough money to make sure this stuff is safe. And we have underplanned for it, and last year I offered an amendment on the triennial decommissioning that's going to put a sunshine amendment on it, where we're going to look at this every 3 years. We're going to look at it for 60 years, 100 years, and 200 years out, because who knows how long it's going to be here.
Well, and am I wrong? But even now, as you know, from the time we started with this stuff until now, aren't they able to start reusing some of this? And they're finding out ways of, hey, there's still some energy in that stuff if we.
Well, let's go back to Jimmy Carter. I think Jimmy Carter made a decision that, you know, we weren't going to head down that road, and I don't think Jimmy Carter was the worst president that we had in the United States. Maybe he's in the top 2, but he made a decision that we weren't going to go down that road, and we're billions of dollars behind in reprocessing. That doesn't look like a viable option at this time.
Okay. So what is it? Is there something we're going to do this year as far as nuclear storage in Minnesota?
Well, I think we're just going to address, I would like to see more nuclear storage, obviously, because I think we need to take it out of the storage pool. But we do need to address it. One of the things we need to do is make sure that the federal government accepts their responsibility and takes ownership of this nuclear waste. It should not be stranded at facilities all over across the country, and I think that's one of the things we need to address.
All right. We have to bring it up because it is the topic of the town. What are there, like 14, 15, 25 stadium proposals now? And
Yeah,
no
I'm
one is
wearing purple
taking my
today.
Blue Earth one, seriously.
Well,
We in Blue Earth, we'll take that stadium. We
I
got the
bet.
I-90, we got the 160. People
Fabulous.
could get that.
Put that offer in.
Well, I'm throwing it out there, but no one's taking me serious, and that's fine. But
Well,
where are we with the Vikings? Is that going to get done?
Well, you know, I was at the state chamber dinner a while back, and they held up an article, and it had Red McCombs and somebody else on it, and the article said, you know, why the Vikings need a new stadium and why they're going to get one. And that was
like
1990
or something.
Yeah,
crazy
19,
number?
yeah. So here's the real issue. You know, the Vikings do generate income. The facility, just the concessions. We're not talking about all the other things that go on with our, you know, hotel rooms and everything else. But just the facility, the player's salary, they generate about $23 million in taxes.
A year.
A year. So if you wanted to take that and put it towards bonding of a Viking stadium, that would be great. Here's the problem, Al. You either need to backfill that $23 million by either raising fees or taxes, and that's not acceptable, or you got to cut $23 million worth of services, and that's not acceptable. The real question, Al, is if we do not build the Vikings a stadium, will they leave? Because if the answer is no, then we shouldn't build them a stadium. But if the answer is yes, then you're going to lose that $34 million anyhow. And so it's one of those things, you're darned if you do and darned if you don't. But if you can answer that question for me, I do, you know, then I can tell you what, but we have not seen any bill yet. I think the state is looking to a way that they can do their portion. For me, it's going to come down to a financial decision. It's going to be weighed between the greater good of the state and the cost to the taxpayers. But I have not seen a bill yet, but I do think it's going to go to a vote this year.
None of us gets to see the bills. I'm just Joe Average guy. I'm not going to see a bill ever in my life. It's either going to.
You're going to get the hey. As soon as a bill hits the desk, you're going to see the details in the
But the devil's in the details. That's why you're not getting bills, right? I mean, this loving up on the table, and no one wants to put out the details because that's what squishes these things.
It's hard.
But let me ask you this, because you're saying $23 million it's made is what we're pulling in.
Yeah, that's
taxes,
right. I might have said a different figure.
But if $23 million's coming in a year in taxes just on Viking-related taxes, Joe Average guy.
Yeah.
I'm not the smartest tool, but if you took that out for 20 years, that's $460 million.
Yeah.
That's kind of what.
That's the state share, but you can't just.
The point is, if they leave, if we don't build them an old Wolf takes them south, you're going to have to backfill that
Right.
$23 million
Exactly.
anyway. It's gone.
Exactly. So, you know, you have to draw it out and you have to make a financial case for it. I mean, it has to be a financial argument on it. You know, the Vikings are a statewide organization. They're a state asset. We value the Vikings. We want them. We'd like them to help it out with a little better record, you know, because, you know, one of the jokes you can say is they probably need a lot more help than just a stadium. But certainly we need to do something.
All right. And I don't disagree, but for a bad math guy like I am, it seems to say you're going to backfill if they leave. And I'm not for giving billionaires millions.
No, and no one is. But you know that argument, it goes right down to the person who's selling chips and pops and sodas for the Super Bowl party. It goes to the person who's selling the big screen TV. You know, and I can assure you, I was in retail. I worked at a Sears store, and when the Packers would get in the playoffs, we'd sell quite a few more big screens.
But it goes further than that. My entire life has been spent rooting for these people for Super Bowls. My son doesn't understand the heartache.
I know
He's too young. He doesn't. We've never been for him. I've been.
Right.
It's here.
We know the NFL can help us out too. We can get some Super Bowl bookings, and that would help.
It wouldn't hurt. I got to go to break. We'll be back right after this to wrap up this show.
In an ideal world, your power company would always be there for you. They'd always invest in the most reliable technology out there, and they do it all just for us. Well, that's just what it's like being a member of our electric co-op. And when we hit the switch, we know exactly what's going to happen.
When we shine as one.
Great River Energy, providing electricity to 28 cooperatives throughout Minnesota.
Farmers really aren't much different from other small business owners. When we're not out in the field, we're online, keeping tabs on the weather, adapting to changes in the market, and protecting our investment by using good conservation practices. Running a successful small business means providing for your family, but when you're a farmer, it also means providing for everyone else. Now, and for generations to come. Brought to you by Minnesota's corn farmers.
Welcome back to Between the Lines. This is our program. Senator Howe, thank you very much for coming on the program. We have a thing called 30 Seconds of Box. That's how we wrap this up. But first, I want to thank Minnesota Cable Communications Association. I want to thank Great River Energy, the Equine Development Corporation, Care Providers of Minnesota, Innovative Marketing Techniques, Minnesota Corn Growers, and Bethany Lutheran College for putting this whole thing on, the City of St. Paul for the use of the studios. My 30 Seconds of Box, right after you do yours, right there in camera number 1.
Well, I just want to thank everyone for giving me the opportunity to serve you, and certainly my door is always open. I feel I work in a bipartisan fashion, and you can certainly send me an email, visit my website, come to the Capitol for a tour. And I think the biggest thing is letting your legislators know what your concerns are. And I serve a certain district. Who knows what the new district will be, but I certainly will have my door open to anybody in the state who has questions or concerns, and I look forward to serving you in the future. Thank you.
I appreciate you very much for coming on the program. And just so you know, he is very easy to get a hold of, and you have one of the greatest assistants ever.
Thank you very much.
Call back, very pleasant on the phone. You have anything you want to talk about, give him a call. My 30 Seconds of the Box has to do with voter ID. We didn't get to it on this show. We'll talk about it next time you're on. But a lot of folks having a problem with whether we should have people have IDs to vote or not. My son turned 15 last week, and we had to go get him his permit. Little did I know he needed 2 forms of ID just to get a permit so that he could ride in the car with me. 2 forms of ID for a kid 15. Had to stretch to figure out even what that could possibly mean. Birth certificate. Went and got the one with a little seal from the hospital. That doesn't count, by the way. You have to go down to the state office and have them credit and so that, that really is a birth certificate. Then he needed a Social Security card. And yes, we had one. We got one when he was born. It's been in a safety deposit box for 15 years and hadn't even been signed yet by the kid. That's what I had to do just to get my son a permit so he can ride with me in the car and learn how to drive. Is it really asking that much that people have an ID so they can vote for who's going to run our state? We all got to have ID somehow. Somehow, in some way. That's my 30 Seconds of the Box. We'll see you again next week.